This month marks the 20th anniversary to the American launch of the Breath of Fire series. Now, this was a strange collaboration between Squaresoft, now Square Enix, but Squaresoft at the time, as well as Capcom. This remains as Capcom's really only old school RPG series. I mean, nowadays they have Deep Down is coming out, along with Dragon's Dogma they have, as well as some other random things, but this is one of their core franchises that they've come to ignore, and it's very sad to see since it is the 20th anniversary. But maybe a lot of you have no idea what what started out as a Super Nintendo classic really is. Like The Legend of Zelda or Final Fantasy, Breath of Fire shares very common themes with all of its games. Like, there's always a blue-haired boy, and his name is Ryu, much like Link, is a blonde-haired boy dressed in green. And he always has the ability to transform into a dragon. And the plots of all these things involves dragons as well as some other stuff. There's returning people, returning races, common schematical themes in terms of like sound effects, the layout for battles and stuff like that, and various other things. But for the most part, they're their own unique tale, while borrowing some other stuff here and there. But none of them so far have been direct sequels to the other ones. They may hint at it sometimes as terms of linking maybe things together, but again, for the most part, they're their own things. For example, the first one starts off and your town is being attacked by this dark dragons, and you're part of this light dragon alliance, and you're a dragon warrior, and dragon warrior, yes, I know. You embark on a quest to basically stop the dark dragons, find allies, and stop them. 2 opens up, you're basically like an orphan, and then you run off with this random guy, and you find a dragon, and then you pass out because he destroys you, and then warps 10 years later, and then they're embarking on a quest together, and they were thieves, and now they're like mercenaries kind of, and everything just falls into place from there. The third one opens up where the dragon, Ryu, I should say, yes, Ryu is all these characters. Ryu is a dragon in a crystal. He is awakened, and then he starts one of the most gruesome beginnings of a game ever. He has a special attack in order to get through these battles where he burns everyone to a crisp. Literally burns everybody to a crisp. It's like the beginning of Parasite Eve, where, if you haven't seen that, there's an opera scene, and everyone spontaneously combusts. It's quite gruesome. And then you get knocked unconscious, put in a cage, you escape the cage, and then a bandit comes along, and then finds out what the cage was, disheveled. It's a naked boy. Takes the naked boy in, he becomes a thief, and again, things unravel from there. 4 is a big departure from the series because all the others are all fantasy in a rich, colorful world, much like Final Fantasy and Dragon Quest and all the others. But this one, it's just a pure desert wasteland, and it was a nice theme for the setting. It's very different, and it had the same engine, or a very similar engine, to the Mega Man Legends series. It was like cel-shaded, basically. It looks gorgeous. Anyway, getting back to the actual story itself, 2 people are in a desert hovercraft, go through the desert, big sand dragon, boom, go back to where the sand dragon crashed, and look, it's a naked boy, and it's Ryu, and then etc, etc. I should also mention that they're all silent protagonists, of course, as with Link. Now 5 takes place in an underground world where it's uninhabitable up above, so everyone has to retreat underneath the ground, and it's very dire and dark, and it's kind of like Breath of Fire 5 is kind of like what Final Fantasy 7 did for that franchise, where it modernized everything and with technology and stuff like that. Very different mood, very different tone to this one. Very dire, very hard. This game came out in 2002. That means there hasn't been a proper game for it being 2014 now. Doing the math in my head. Oh look, 12 years. 12 years! Those games came out consistently. 1994 all the way to 2002, that's not a big span of years. That's a good cramming of all these games, and they're all quite good. They're not perfect, mind you, and they're not just like, you know, must plays, but they're very good RPGs. You know, the good mid-tier stuff that is well beloved by a very deserved group of fans, I should say. You know, they have their issues and whatever, and it's hard to go back to some of these because the you know, the random encounters is kind of hard. But let's get back to all this series now. So 1 and 2, pretty much the same battle system, and had a very innovative one where there was auto battle. Now they took that out for the rest of them, I'm pretty sure. So the first 2 were turn-based. You walked around the world map or on a, you know, a dungeon, and battle started. You chose you chose you chose all of your attacks and whatever, and battles played out like that. 3, the exact same thing, only the cool thing was when you were wandering around, you fought directly in that environment that you were. It didn't take place in some spiraled world that, you know, you step on something and oh, you're on the same battlefield that you fought 1,000 times before. No, it actually takes place on the map, and you'll even be like disabled by like random trees in the way. Like you can't even see the monsters sometimes because like the battles start in this random area. That was a very cool addition for the series and to RPGs in general. It was better for the load time, so you don't have to sit through a whole semi-small cutscene of like the battle arenas, like, you know, starting. And then 4 went back to that where it was, let's go to the swirling battle thing and have the thing. I guess we didn't like that before. Again, 1 through 4, all pretty much the same for battle system, with attacks and all that stuff. Turn-based RPG. Now 5 is where things really start to get interesting, and maybe this may be the cause of why we just don't see, well, maybe why the series kind of died. Because a number of things. 1, also cel-shaded, kind of like 4, but more pronounced. Very beautiful game, even though it's underneath ground. Cool character art. But battles were basically, you walked around the dungeon, you could throw meat at, you know, a monster, and it would be distracted, and you can go up and behind and kick him, and it initiates battle. And the battle takes place exactly where you kicked that thing, but it did the whole swirly thing of starting the thing like that, and sometimes there was more monsters that were hiding elsewhere. But it was still more tactical, and it's kind of like, again, going back to Parasite Eve. Okay, so you get into battle, and you have this AP that lets you use attacks, as well it decreases your movement. So it uses movement and attacks, and that's where AP goes. So you can move the environment. Attacks have a distance relationship between where they can be used, and you can stick it behind enemies. Enemies can like flank you and stuff like that. It's pretty cool. And I would say that because I do like the battle system, except that even the first dungeon is just brutally hard. Brutally hard. I mean, it starts off fine. Okay, it starts off fine. And then you get to the boss for that dungeon, and he just smokes you. And then you have the option of ending the game and restarting where you last saved. And then you could have the option of, hey, maybe you should just restart the game and take all of your progress and move it on to the next save. And you say to yourself, man, that was hard, but maybe that hard. Let's warp ahead. So there's some instances where you need to transform into the dragon creature as Ryu, and that takes a toll on Ryu. Now, if you reach the 100% percentage, you know what I mean? If you reach 100% of his total limit, that means the game will end because he'll basically explode and go crazy. So there is an ability that the game makes you use unless you want to die, basically. But if you use it too much, the game will basically end. That's why they have the system implemented in there where you can just restart the game because, oops, you went too far with the whole percentage, so now you should restart. It's, to put a common and more modern reality on this, it's Breath of Fire is Dark Souls, or Demon Souls, basically. And a lot of fans probably did not like that. It's one thing to make your game, you know, super hard, but to then make it, you know, kind of something that makes you have to stop playing because of the way it was designed is kind of So is that why the game was stopped? I don't know. I mean, it's been 12 years. And then I should end by saying that yes, Breath of Fire 6 is coming, and oh, was I excited when I read that headline. Breath of Fire 6 has been announced by Capcom, and they were teasing it, and we're like, oh, it's gonna be Breath of Fire, and oh my gosh, it was. And then you find out it's gonna be for mobile phones. Another in a long line of sequels to beloved franchises being made over to mobile phones. I would not be surprised if Dragon Quest XI is ported, or, you know, made specifically for mobile phones. Just because that's where the market is, and people just figure that they can make a big buck on free-to-play games or games that you can buy on a store. I mean, Square Enix thinks they can do that. They port Dragon Quest IV recently, and I say Dargan because, yes, they spelled it wrong. Everyone makes spelling and errors in their voice and whatever, as I do here. But I think some things get way overcharged on the iTunes Store, and my whole argument for mobile phones and iOS devices and Android devices just ruining the market and for beloved franchise. I mean, you can make a spin-off, sure, but I mean, that's a story for another day. But suffice it to say, 6 is going to be made for mobile phones. So, but, you know, maybe that'll spark interest back into the Breath of Fire franchise from the John Q. public. And maybe then Capcom will be like, maybe we should remake one of these for the Vita or the 3DS or some console, or maybe we should port some stuff over to the other stuff. Something would be nice. Maybe we'll even get a console sequel if this thing is good enough. Again, I'd settle for a enhanced version of the first game or something. It's very sad to see the series, you know, kind of go up in flame, as it were. But let's not shed tears today. Today, let's celebrate Breath of Fire for what it is. A underappreciated, but very grand, very great franchise, beloved by many. So here's to you and your 20th Breath of Fire. May your fire still burn bright, even though Capcom is in dire plight.
Boom, ba-jack, boom, boom, ba-jack, boom, ba-jack, boom, boom, ba-jack, boom, ba-jack, boom, boom, ba-jack, boom, ba-jack, boom, boom, subscribe, boom, ba-jack, boom, boom, ba-jack, boom, ba-jack, boom, boom, ba-jack, boom, ba-jack, boom, boom, ba-jack, boom, ba-jack, boom, boom, subscribe.